My wife Serafina's company was on the verge of bankruptcy, so I sold the luxury house and car she once gave me, even added my own years of savings, all to help her get through the crisis. But then, the appraisal center contacted me. The property deed was fake, the car purchase contract was fake, and even the luxury watch was just a high-end counterfeit. The bank outright rejected my loan application, saying I had no assets to use as collateral. I argued that my wife had property and assets under her name, and those were marital assets. But the bank replied they couldn't find any record of my marriage. Turns out, even the marriage certificate was fake. Fortunately, when she borrowed money from me to start her company, the IOU she signed for over $10 million was real. Chapter 1. Mr. Ethan, our system shows that you are listed as single and have no assets under your name for collateral, so your loan application has been denied. If you have any questions, feel free to call us again. I listened to the cold, emotionless voice from the bank staff on the phone. I was dazed. How could this be possible? I took out our marriage certificate and looked at the little red booklet I had carefully preserved. Could even this be fake? As I stood in a daze, the sound of a key turning the lock came. It was my wife, Serafina. She stretched, clearly exhausted, and walked into the bedroom to ask me, "Ethan, I went to several banks again today. I finally managed to get a bit of money." But then her eyes landed on the items sprawled casually on the bed. The property deed, car contract, watch, belt, cufflinks. In an instant, her pupils contracted. "What are you looking for?" A moment later, she seemed to realize her slip and quickly, smoothly collected those items, flashing a soft smile. "Why did you take out all these valuables?" I didn't want to tear things apart with her just yet, so I replied casually, "I thought about selling them. The company's tight on cash. I want to help out." Serafina leaned softly into my arms like she had no bones, planting a gentle kiss on my jawline. She wrapped her arms around my neck and said, "No matter how hard things get, I won't let you suffer. I'll cover the company's debts with my dowry. You've stood by me through so much. I once swore I'd treat you well, and I won't go back on that promise." Her face was filled with tenderness, her amber eyes like melted honey, reflecting my silhouette as if she loved me with all her soul. But I only felt cold, a chill piercing through me because I knew very well everything on that bed which looked like it was worth a fortune was all fake, utterly worthless, just like our marriage. Serafina's phone rang. She sat up, her expression turning serious. She quickly threw on the jacket she had just taken off, ready to leave in a rush. As she reached the hallway, she finally remembered to turn around and say, "Ethan, something came up at the company. You might have to eat dinner by yourself tonight." This wasn't the first time she left in a hurry. I used to think she was just busy, that her work kept her running around. I never questioned it. But now, as the company's deputy general manager, how could I not know if there was any urgent business requiring Serafina's attention? I looked deeply at her and suddenly said, "Let me take you." Serafina froze mid-reach for her bag. She seemed troubled, forcing a smile. "You work hard too. No need. Just stay home and rest." But I refused to let her brush me off. I was going with her. The moment we stepped outside, I immediately understood why Serafina had been so resistant. Her first love, Damien, was waiting in the driveway, sitting behind the wheel of a dark green sports car. He rolled down the window, stuck out his hand, and smiled as he greeted Serafina. "President Serafina, what took you so long?" The design of that sports car looked very familiar. It was the same globally limited edition model Serafina had supposedly bought for me, the same one that appeared on the fake purchase contract I had verified. Serafina had always told me that the car was still stuck in customs and would be delivered later, yet here it was. Damien was driving it. Judging from the wear on the tires, he had already driven it for hundreds of kilometers. A shiver ran through me, and the ridiculous thought suddenly flashed across my mind. Damien was Serafina's first love. Could it be that this car was never meant for me, but for him? I asked casually, hiding my emotions, "Serafina, didn't you say this model was a global limited edition? How come Damien has the same one?" Damien, not the least bit embarrassed, didn't even bother getting out of the driver's seat. He said arrogantly, "Ethan, this is your car. I picked it up for you so you wouldn't have to go yourself. No need to thank me." Serafina looked like she was stuck in the middle. She said softly to me, "If it bothers you, I can tell Damien to get out." My fists clenched instinctively. Serafina had always spoiled me. Once, Just because a maid accidentally touched my suit without gloves, she scolded them harshly and fired them all. But with someone as blatantly arrogant as Damien, she never showed any temper. Over the years, it's not like I hadn't gotten upset over Damien and Serafina, but Serafina always argued that firing Damien would make her look guilty, and keeping him around proved there was nothing between them anymore. And I, like a fool, actually believed her. If I hadn't tried to save the company and stumbled across these clues, I might still be blaming myself for being too petty. Snapping back to reality, I shook my head and calmly said, "No need. Some things, maybe I should confirm for myself." I put on a generous expression and said, "Since you already have a driver, you two go ahead." I went out earlier too, feeling a bit tired now. Serafina raised her brows slightly, surprised. "Where did you go?" I explained. "I've still got some savings left. I went to the bank to withdraw them to help with the company." The next second, Serafina rushed over and threw her arms around me, burying her head in my chest. Her voice was muffled with emotion. "Ethan, having you is the greatest blessing of my life. Once the company pulls through, I'll give you a promotion and a raise. I'll buy you a better house and a better car, okay?" The old me would have held her tightly and said this was what I should do as her husband. But now, all I felt was disgust. I pushed her away firmly and said, "Come on, acting cute at your age, President Serafina. Go save your company." I stood in place for a long time, watching the dark green sports car disappear around the corner. A bitter smirk curled on my lips. Serafina was still trying to sell me dreams, spinning fantasies like nothing had happened. But she seemed to have forgotten when she started her company and borrowed $10 million from me. She signed an IOU right in front of me. That $10 million was more than enough to crush a company already hanging by a thread. Chapter 2. After seeing her true colors, my gaze became clearer. I brought the IOU to a law firm for verification. The lawyer examined it, nodded, and smiled. "This IOU holds full legal validity. According to the written terms, the repayment was due 3 years ago. You can now request the court to enforce repayment at any time." I let out a bitter, self-deprecating laugh. Should I feel lucky? At least the IOU was real. This was the one thing she hadn't faked. My voice was rough as I said to the lawyer, "Attorney Chun, I need to discuss something important with you tonight. Please reserve some time for me." Because before that, I had something even more important to do. I then took the forged marriage certificate to the Civil Affairs Bureau to check its serial number. I knew Serafina wasn't the type to forge things baselessly, just like with the sports car. But I hadn't expected that I would actually find a real couple under that serial number. The groom, Damien, the bride, Serafina, and the date they registered their marriage was the day before Serafina and I supposedly got married. My grip tightened around the marriage certificate. So my so-called marriage to Serafina had been a lie from the very beginning. I still remembered how she avoided my eyes on our wedding day, speaking to me with extra softness and sweetness. Back then, I thought she was just shy. Only now did I realize she was guilty. With a dark expression, I went on to check the ownership of the house Serafina supposedly bought for me. As expected, the registered owner was Damien. Then I remembered what the appraisal center said. The packaging for all the luxury goods I had were real. It was just the contents that were fake. That meant Serafina had most likely bought the real items, but swapped them out. And as for who received the genuine goods, there was no need to guess. Armed with this mountain of hard evidence, I returned home and for the first time tried to access Serafina's personal computer. She had always strictly warned me not to touch it, claiming it contained important business documents. I had trusted her completely, never even thinking of opening it. But now, with trembling hands, I typed in Damien's birthday. The screen unlocked. Even though I had mentally prepared myself, the reality still made my heart skip a beat. Inside, Serafina was chatting with Damien under a secondary account. The two used matching couple profile pictures. Serafina's contact name for Damien was The Sun, and her own nickname was The Sun Belongs to Me. There were tons of messages between them. The most recent one read, "Damien, frustrated and angry Serafina, I'm just an assistant right now. Everyone in the company says I'm not good enough for you. It's infuriating. You have to punish Ethan for me." And Serafina replied almost immediately, "Of course. I'll pick a good day soon and kick him out of the company with nothing. How about that?" My hand tightened on the mouse, and I let out a cold snort. Kick me out of the company? Leave me with nothing? Serafina must have completely forgotten about the IOU. Right now, her company's cash flow was tight, teetering on the edge of collapse. Let's see what happens when the court summons arrives. Who will be the one ruined and kicked out then? Like a form of self-inflicted punishment, I spent the entire afternoon going through every single chat log. When it came to Damien, Serafina was always the more talkative one. She shared her life with him like a giddy schoolgirl, even getting jealous when Damien talked too much with other female colleagues. But with me, Serafina was always polite and reserved, greeting me with robotic regularity, showing just enough concern to pass as attentive. What I used to see as warmth now felt like pure, perfunctory routine. As I scrolled down the messages, Serafina suddenly sent me a text. "Ethan, you didn't look too well today. I ordered food for you. It'll be there soon." Only then did I look up and realize it was already dark outside. The old me would have felt deeply touched by a message like that, delighted even. But now I knew, when Damien lost his appetite, Serafina would cook for him herself, sometimes even feed him by hand. Love or not, it couldn't be more obvious. But then, why would she go to such lengths to deceive me for 7 whole years? Why cover her tracks so thoroughly? Was I still useful to her in some way? I still remembered vividly how she held my hand when signing the IOU, tears in her eyes, swearing with utter seriousness that she would never betray me. I thought our love was mutual, but now she felt like a stranger, someone I'd never truly known. Snapping out of it, I picked up my phone and replied with a simple "okay." In the past, I would have sent a long, gushing "love you, thank you, my sweet wife." But Serafina didn't seem to notice anything strange. She casually replied with a silly emoji. That same emoji. I'd just seen it earlier in her chats with Damien. So that's where she got her collection of stickers. I'd once wondered when she started using emojis like that. Turns out, the signs were always there. I didn't waste any more time mourning lost love. I used my phone to record all the chat logs as evidence, just in case. Once I finished, I headed straight to the law firm to talk to the lawyer. After I laid everything out, the lawyer fell into thought and said, "Mr. Ethan, this IOU is legally binding. I can help you file a lawsuit right away. But your wife is the legal representative of the company. If the company goes bankrupt, she'll bear primary responsibility." He paused, then added gently, "While I understand your position, you should be aware that spouses share joint liability. That means you'll also be responsible for the company's debts. You might suffer significant financial losses yourself. Please think carefully." I smiled faintly and replied, "Attorney Chun, Serafina and I were never actually married. The marriage certificate was fake." Chapter 3. The lawyer widened his eyes, thinking it was all my doing, and gave me a thumbs up with admiration. "Mr. Ethan, you really are foresight. Great. I'll draft the complaint right away." I simply smiled without a word. It wasn't foresight. All of this was Serafina reaping what she sowed. As I walked out of the law firm, my eyes caught the bold headline on a nearby newsstand. An entire front page of the newspaper read, "Business Circle's rising star Serafina splurges again, buys antique brooch for beloved husband." I walked over. The article was nothing more than the usual fluff, talking about how deeply Serafina loved me, how she had spent a fortune at auctions buying extravagant gifts for me. Now she had bought an antique brooch again. The article praised Serafina as beautiful and virtuous, a model wife. I gave a bitter chuckle as I recalled the past 7 years of marriage. Everyone thought Serafina was insanely devoted to her husband, madly in love with me. Every time the company made a bit of money, she would spend it all on me, buy me luxury houses and cars. And in the face of everyone's admiration and compliments, Serafina would only lean shyly on my shoulder, look up at me with tender eyes and say, "Ethan was there for me when I was a nobody. Without him, there would be no me today. He is my everything." I used to get lost in those tender gazes, even though sometimes I got jealous because of how close she was with Damien. I always believed I was the one being loved. I was the winner. Now I realize I lost completely. When I got home, I began packing up my things. Just thinking that this house belonged to Damien made my skin crawl, like ants were crawling all over me. I felt utterly disgusted. In the past, every time Serafina had social events, she wouldn't come home before midnight. But today, out of nowhere, she came back unusually early. When she saw me packing, her brows furrowed slightly, and she asked with confusion, "Ethan, are you heading out?" I didn't stop folding clothes and replied calmly. Just decluttering. Some things are too old. I don't like them anymore. Time to throw them out. Serafina was a bit surprised. After all, I'd always been frugal. Wearing the same clothes for 5 or 6 years wasn't unusual. But she didn't question me. Instead, she gave a doting smile. All right, toss out whatever you don't like. I'll buy you all new ones. Her acting really is impressive. If I hadn't started noticing the signs, I would still be in the dark. The next moment, her tone suddenly changed, hesitant. Ethan, the company really is in a bit of a crisis right now. It might need your savings. Don't worry, I'll pay you back soon. And that's when it clicked. So that's why she came back, after my savings. Probably Damien pushed her to this time. I sat up straight and joked. Oh, then you'd better pay me back with the highest interest. Serafina thought I was just teasing, something playful between lovers. After all, even when we started the business, I handed over my entire savings without so much as a frown, and in these 7 years, I had never once asked her for money. She laughed so hard she could barely keep her mouth closed. I'll write you an IOU right now. I leisurely watched Serafina seriously write the IOU, sign it, and even stamp it with her personal seal. This trap, she walked into it herself. She has no one to blame. Let's see now, once I collect this IOU and her company goes bankrupt, how exactly is she going to repay this new $5 million she just borrowed from me? Dusting off the still warm IOU, I was in high spirits. I let out a yawn and ushered her out of the room. Serafina, it's getting late. Go sleep in the guest room. I still need to pack. Don't want to disturb your rest. Holding a bank card and smiling, she told me to rest early too. I had a wonderful night's sleep. The next day, I deliberately carried all the fake luxury goods Serafina had bought me over the years and headed to the company, ready to confront her and walk away once and for all. But the moment I stepped into the company, I was greeted by a noisy crowd. There was a celebration going on stage. Serafina smiled as she handed an appointment letter for Vice President straight into Damien's hands. Below the stage, thunderous applause erupted from the staff. From the looks of it, they had arranged everything beforehand. Everyone knew but me. I stood at the entrance and asked calmly, "And what about me?" Serafina looked a bit flustered, pulled me aside, and whispered, "Ethan, I'm doing this so you won't be too tired. Be good, okay? Just relax at home from now on. Let others handle the work." If it were the old me, I might have fallen for her sweet words, thinking she truly cared for me. But now I knew this was all just to pave the way for Damien's rise. So I furrowed my brow on purpose and pretended to look heartbroken as I resisted. "But I want to help you. I don't want Damien to take my position. Unless, do you still have special feelings for him deep down?" Serafina's brows knitted tightly, just about to speak, but Damien up on stage let out a cold snort and mocked. "Ethan, why are you rambling so much? Are you trying to challenge the CEO? Is this company Serafina's or yours? You're just a freeloader, acting like you're something special." He wore a custom-tailored suit, full of arrogance, striking a pose befitting a vice president. The style of that suit, I recognized it right away. It was from Serafina's go-to personal designer. Clearly, Damien thought he was about to ascend to power and no longer felt the need to keep up appearances. Serafina, instead of being angry at Damien's arrogance, turned to me and said, "Ethan, I've already made my decision. Please don't make things difficult for me, all right?" As she spoke, she took the lead and began clapping, signaling everyone to join in congratulating Damien on his promotion. With the CEO applauding, everyone naturally followed, offering loud praise. "Congratulations, President Damien. From now on, our company will thrive under you and CEO Serafina. I always knew you had the aura of a true leader, so impressive and charismatic." Looks like I was right. Among the cheering crowd, I alone remained motionless. Damien basked in the flattery, clearly delighted. Seeing I stayed silent, his eyes gleamed with malice. He deliberately picked on me and asked with a sneer, "Ethan, everyone else is congratulating me. Are you looking down on me?" Serafina, now fully invested in Damien, tugged my sleeve gently and coaxed, "Just give Damien some face, all right? Today's a happy day. Don't make things ugly." I still said nothing, even let out a quiet, cold chuckle. Serafina's face darkened and she warned in a low voice, "Ethan, if you keep this up, I'm going to get angry." In the past, whatever she said, I followed without hesitation. But now, Seeing I remained unmoved, Serafina's eyes blazed with fury. She snapped, "Ethan, I was planning to keep you in the company, but if you keep acting like a child, I'll really send you home." All I felt was bitter irony. I curved my lips into a smirk and stepped forward. Serafina thought I was finally giving in and visibly relaxed. But in the next second, I picked up the pile of counterfeit goods I'd placed at my feet just moments ago, and then I tossed them directly onto Damien and Serafina. "To the CEO and Vice President, my gift to you both. Do you like it?" Chapter 4. Like a shower of confetti, all sorts of items, contracts, ties, belts, brooches, rained down on the two of them. Serafina instinctively shielded Damien, and the hard edge of a property deed struck her temple, leaving it red and swollen. Everyone was stunned, staring at the property deeds and marriage certificates scattered across the floor. They couldn't understand why the usually mild-mannered me had suddenly lashed out, especially at my loving wife. Serafina was dumbfounded too. Something seemed to click in her mind, and she ignored the injury on her forehead as she hurriedly said, "Ethan, let me explain." I gave a cold laugh. "Explain what, Serafina? You and Damien are so in love. Don't drag me into it. It's disgusting." Serafina's face went pale and panic flashed across her features. She instinctively retorted, "It's not like that. I. She stammered without saying anything meaningful, then suddenly hardened her expression and looked up at me, speaking in a pitiful voice. "Damien's name might be on the deeds, but you're the one who got to live the rich life. You enjoyed the admiration of everyone. Can't I at least fulfill his small wish?" The way she said it, it was as if I were the unreasonable one, and poor Damien was some tragic figure being wronged. I never would have dreamed Serafina could twist the truth so shamelessly. The crowd around us had now gotten their full fill of drama and started whispering among themselves. Damien looked defiant, no longer pretending. He boldly wrapped his arm around Serafina's shoulder and smugly declared, "Since you know the truth now, why don't you get lost already? Your luxury house is mine, your car is mine, Serafina is mine, and the company is mine too." A smug smile curled on his lips, fully convinced he was the ultimate winner, and he looked at me with utter contempt. "You're just a clown. If I were you, I'd crawl into a hole and never come out. And yet you still have the nerve to show your face here." Everyone looked utterly shocked. No one had ever imagined that the so-called husband-obsessed Serafina would have an affair. I, however, simply looked at Serafina and said, "Is that so, Serafina? Is that what you really think too?" Serafina's gaze flickered, her brows furrowed deeply. She let out a sigh and murmured, "Ethan, I've wronged you. You can ask for anything you want." I scoffed and replied with disdain, "Ask for something? Do you even have the ability to give it? Your company is on the verge of collapse." Before Serafina could respond, Damien burst into arrogant laughter. "You still don't know, do you? Serafina's company is doing just fine. There's nothing wrong with it. You were dumb enough to hand over your savings to help her. What an idiot." Instead of getting angry, I smiled even wider and said, "Damien, so what if you're vice president now? Do you even own shares in the company? One word from Serafina and you're out. And you're still strutting around like you're important." Serafina immediately jumped in to defend him, scolding sharply, "Ethan, stop spouting nonsense. I gave Damien half of my shares. He's more qualified than anyone to be vice president." I sneered silently. I'd been with Serafina for 8 years, married for 7, and she never once talked about giving me equity. But for Damien, she generously handed over half the company. Fine by me. When the company goes under, the two shareholders can spend the rest of their lives paying off the debt. As if the universe had a sense of timing, just then, the company security reported that a group of people speaking legal jargon had arrived and wanted to come in. Serafina's expression softened. She turned to Damien and gently explained, "They should be the lawyers I called. They're here to handle your equity disclosure. From now on, you'll be our company's official vice president." Seeing that I remained silent, Damien thought I had accepted defeat and let out a wild laugh. "Ethan, I'm about to become the boss of a publicly listed company, and you? You're just a worm. The former school heartthrob. Look at you now, what a joke. Someday when you're on your knees begging, I might throw you a scrap of food." Serafina, on the other hand, looked at me seriously and said in a low voice, "Ethan, if you admit your fault now, I can pretend none of this ever happened. I simply shook my head. Immediately, the onlookers all wore amused expressions, waiting for drama, expecting me to blow up and go at them. But what none of them expected, the next moment, walking into the company lobby was not a group of lawyers, but a team of uniformed officers. Who is Serafina? This is a court summons. You are required to repay the debt owed to Mr. Ethan immediately. Otherwise, we will initiate asset freezing procedures and shut down your company. Chapter 5. In an instant, everyone looked as if they'd been struck over the head, shock written across their faces as they all turned to Serafina in unison. I sighed inwardly. Perfect timing. When this case wraps up, I'm definitely treating Attorney Chun to a nice dinner. It took Serafina a while to recover. She tried to keep her composure and frowned at me. Ethan, was this your doing too? What's gotten into you today? Are you trying to stir up endless trouble? I sneered silently. Judging by her reaction, she probably thought these court officers were just hired actors sent by me to make a scene. Damien rolled his eyes and even stepped forward, trying to mess with the officers. Hey man, where'd you rent that uniform? Looks pretty legit. How much did Ethan pay you guys? Before I could say a word, the court officers had already turned serious and addressed Serafina. Are you the legal representative of this company? If you do not wire the owed amount to Mr. Ethan's account within 3 days, we will proceed with forced execution. Your company's assets will be frozen and the business will be shut down. As they spoke, they pulled out their credentials and displayed them. Damien's hand froze midair and he looked helplessly at Serafina. Serafina, is this for real? Serafina clenched her fists so tightly her long nails dug into her palms, but she seemed numb to the pain. With her experience, of course, she could tell this was no joke. She just couldn't understand what debt was she supposedly being called on to repay. Then it seemed to dawn on her. Her eyes turned razor-sharp as she glared at me and snapped. So yesterday, when you made me write that IOU, this was your trap all along? Very clever of you, Ethan. Then she turned to the court officers. And you must be mistaken. That IOU was signed only yesterday. How could repayment be due today? One of the officers replied coldly, Ms. Serafina, if you have any objections, please consult your lawyer. We'll be taking our leave. Wait. Serafina tried to stop them, but failed to catch up. As the officers left the premises, turning back, she frowned at me. Ethan, really? You're demanding repayment today for something signed yesterday? What's the point? I responded flatly. No, this isn't the money you borrowed yesterday. This is the first debt, the 10 million. The sword that had been hanging invisibly over her head had finally dropped. What a shame Serafina had no idea, still under the illusion that everything was under her control. She sighed helplessly at me. Come on, Ethan, stop joking. When did I ever owe you 10 million? I only borrowed 5 million yesterday. Don't you know falsifying IOU is illegal? You clearly know the company's struggling. Do you really have to go this far? She paused, then her tone softened. Besides, would you really ask me for money? Fine, I'll give you 10% of the company's shares. That's enough, isn't it? She looked at me like she was making a huge concession, as if I should be grateful. Her eyes held a faint trace of reproach. More likely, her feelings for Damien never truly ended. She got emotionally involved and made an irrational choice. She paused for a second. Then, back then, when I got together with him, I promised I would marry him. You know I'm not someone who breaks promises. But over all these years, we never crossed the line. Nothing ever happened between us that would betray you. I cut her off coldly. That's enough. I don't care anymore, Serafina. Don't contact me again. I truly wish you and Damien a long and happy life together. Chapter 8. Serafina finally lost control. Her voice, distorted and amplified by the call, suddenly surged. How could you bless me and him to live happily ever after? I'm your wife, Ethan. Have you lost your mind? I rolled my eyes internally. So stubborn. You were sharp enough when scheming against me, and now you're pretending you don't understand a word? Too late. I didn't bother with her any further and hung up the phone. 2 days later, Attorney Chin informed me that Serafina's account was out of funds. The court had enforced a freeze on her bank cards and transferred the 10 million to my account. Now, her company's cash flow had completely collapsed. It was essentially beyond saving. I asked. She didn't sell her house or her car? Attorney Chin sighed softly. Her husband Damien flat out refused. I'm not sure what he told her, but she eventually decided to take on all the debt alone. I let out a cold chuckle. Didn't expect that. Serafina really does love Damien. At this point, even knowing Damien's no good, she's still willing to carry everything on her own. But what does that have to do with me? My expression turned indifferent as I said suddenly, "Oh right, I still have an IOU from her. Once the deadline hits, please help me file another lawsuit." Attorney Chen looked at me with newfound respect. This move alone would drag both of them down again, permanently. After leaving the law firm, I went with Gabriel to scout locations for the new company. We quickly settled on an entire floor in an office building. I thought things would end there, that I'd never have to deal with Serafina and her mess again. But to my surprise, Serafina made a dramatic comeback. Her company, once on the brink of bankruptcy, somehow came back to life. No idea where she got the investment from. Still, that too was part of her strength. Fate is fate. I'll just take what I'm owed. No need to say more. 3 months later, at an industry seminar, I ran into Serafina. She was wearing a high-end custom gown, leaning softly against Damien, playing the part of the doting wife. Had I not seen it with my own eyes, I would never have imagined the once decisive and dominant CEO turning into this. I rolled my eyes internally and was about to walk past, but she suddenly stepped in my way, blocking my path. She lifted her gaze, pride written all over her face, and said coldly, "What, Ethan? Feeling guilty, so you're trying to avoid me?" "Guilty? Who's the guilty one here?" I replied coldly. "Well, if it isn't the famous CEO Serafina. By the way, when are you paying back that $5 million you borrowed from me? Don't forget, I'm charging you the highest possible interest." Serafina raised her slender neck and locked eyes with me. "That little amount. Of course I'll pay it back. You clearly don't know, but I've partnered with a major international corporation. They're giving me unlimited funding. You, on the other hand, are just a small-time loser, still fussing over interest." Wait a minute, unlimited funding? That screamed scam. But I didn't feel the need to warn her. No reason to dirty myself trying to save her. I simply let out an "oh" and replied, "Well then, CEO Serafina, if you're so rich, why haven't you paid me back yet?" Serafina looked dismissive and tapped on her phone casually. And just like that, she really transferred the $5 million over. Before I could say anything, Damien, who had been holding Serafina by the waist, finally couldn't hold back. He let out a mocking laugh. "Ethan, getting worked up over $5 million. How petty. I heard you started a company. How's that going? If you're strapped for cash, just get on your knees and give me 3 loud cow-dows. Maybe I'll overlook the past and toss you some investment." I looked at Damien suspiciously. Serafina being smug was expected, but Damien acting like a nouveau riche. Both wrists flaunting luxury watches, jewel-studded pins, and cufflinks glittering so hard they could blind you. If their company were truly doing well, I might understand, but they just barely crawled out of a financial disaster. And they already have spare cash? Seeing my skeptical expression, Damien cleared his throat. "What? Don't believe me? I've got 50 million in chips over in Las Vegas, and I'm just getting started. You'll never measure up to me." Chapter 9. Las Vegas? Well, that explains everything. So they'd taken it to the gambling tables. I suddenly remembered what Attorney Chun had said, that they refused to sell their house or car to cover their debts. Now it made sense. They probably used them as collateral for chips. Too bad gambling is a near-guaranteed loss. No way I'd get myself tangled up with those two again. Snapping out of my thoughts, I replied calmly, "No thanks. I prefer earning money the solid way." The two of them looked like they wanted to say more, but the next second, a slender hand wrapped around my arm. My secretary, Selena, leaned in, panting slightly. "Sorry, Mr. CEO, my heel broke just now. I went to the restroom to fix it." Selena was a fresh graduate this year, but highly competent. I appreciated her professionalism, so I brought her to nearly every business event. I curved my lips into a smile. "It's fine, let's go." Selena nodded. Her gaze drifted to my slightly crooked tie, and without a word she reached up to adjust it for me. She also played a second role I had assigned her, my girlfriend in public. It made it easier for her to interact with reps from other companies. I was just about to respond when a sharp shattering sound of glass suddenly rang out beside me. I turned toward the noise. Serafina had crushed the wine glass in her right hand, completely shattered it in her grip. Red liquid, whether wine or blood, was dripping onto the floor, blooming like little roses. But Serafina seemed totally unaware, her beautiful eyes locked onto Selena, voice like an ice storm. Ethan, who is she? Selena was clearly confused. I stepped forward and gently shielded her behind me, speaking with measured calm. She's my girlfriend. Why, CEO Serafina, do you have a problem with people falling in love? Serafina's eyes reddened even more. Damien was a bit slower to react, grabbing Serafina's bloodied hand filled with shards of glass, and exclaimed, Serafina, I'll go find medical staff. Don't move. With that, he ran off. But Serafina stood there like a glitching robot, frozen and oblivious to everything, just staring at me in a daze. After a long pause, her voice rasped from her throat. Impossible. I didn't quite understand what she meant, but she seemed to convince herself otherwise. Her gaze sharpened and a smug smile appeared. There's no way you found a new girlfriend in just 3 months. Ethan, you knew I'd be at this gala tonight. You brought her to provoke me, didn't you? I frowned. CEO, please stop flattering yourself. But it was like she didn't even hear me. She pulled a small jade pendant out of her bag, dangling it from her finger. She softened her voice, like she was granting a royal pardon. Come on, Ethan, drop the act. It's been 3 months, haven't you had enough? Remember this pendant? You left it behind. Clearly you wanted me to remember what we had. I admit, you mattered a lot to me. Her tone grew increasingly gentle. Come home. As long as you do, I'll forgive everything. I stared at the small jade amulet in her hand. It was something we picked up during a trip when we were deeply in love, just a random stone we had polished into a jade piece pendant, a symbol of our relationship. The jade wasn't high quality, lots of impurities, yet Serafina had kept it carefully all this time. The reason I hadn't taken it with me when I left was simple. She had locked it in her safe. I never had the combination. Any item that symbolized us as a couple, I had already destroyed every last one. And now, after all this time, here it was again. I lowered my eyes and reached out to take the pendant from Serafina. Her eyes lit up and a soft laugh escaped her lips. I knew it. You. Her sentence broke off. At the same time, the clear, brittle sound of jade shattering rang through the room. Chapter 10. Staring at the shattered jade on the ground, Serafina looked utterly stunned, staring at me in disbelief. She stood frozen like a statue, turned to stone. I couldn't care less about how she was feeling. What mattered was that I was finally in a better mood. I gave a nonchalant smile. Ah, my bad. I forgot to throw out the piece of junk. Thanks for bringing it over. With that, I gestured for Selena to leave with me. But just as I turned around, Serafina grabbed me. Her bloodied hand clutched my arm, leaving a red, smeared handprint. I thought she was angry that I'd embarrassed her multiple times tonight. What I didn't expect was the panic written all over her face. Her voice lowered in desperation. Ethan, don't do this. You didn't like the pendant, right? That's fine. I'll buy you a new one. Just don't be like this. I tilted my head. Be like what? Was my expression that bad? Serafina, however, kept mumbling, and without warning tears slid down her cheeks. She looked helpless, like a child. You weren't like this before. You never ignored me when I got hurt. You were never cold to me. Back then, your eyes only ever saw me. I let out a mocking laugh. Was Serafina seriously still living in some fantasy, too? Timing. And still dreaming of a fairy tale? But she seemed obsessed, continuing to plead with me. Ethan, can't we just go back to the way things were? I'll let you spend all my money, okay? Let's go to the real estate office right now. I'll buy you the best house. I frowned and forcefully pulled her hand off me. CEO Serafina, we're adults. Don't you know what it means to part on good terms? She winced in pain, shrinking back, staring at me in a daze. Right then, Damien returned with medical personnel. Seeing Serafina's red, teary eyes, he immediately grabbed my collar, fist raised. Ethan, you just don't know what's good for you. If I see you harassing Serafina again, making moves on my woman, I swear I'll beat you to death. Here we go again. I rolled my eyes internally. This kind of street thug energy, the fake tough guy bravado, always trying to act like some gangster boss. I honestly didn't understand how Serafina had fallen so hard for someone this crude and uncouth. I replied with calm indifference. Damien, are you not aware that this event is under police security? Damien's eyes were filled with fury. He clearly wasn't listening. He sneered. You think I'm scared of the cops just because you said so? I looked past him, directly at the line of uniformed officers now entering the venue, and said seriously, "The police are here. Keep bluffing, you piece of—" Just as he was about to throw a punch, Damien's hand was caught and pinned. The next moment, a pair of cold handcuffs clicked shut around his wrists. Beside him, Serafina, who was having her wound cleaned with iodine, was also taken into custody. One officer stated firmly, "You two are suspected of illegal gambling. Please come with us." Later, I saw in the news that Serafina's so-called funding had come from loan sharks, and Damien had gotten involved in shady underground operations. Both of them were dealt the punishment they deserved. 3 years later, Serafina was released from prison, but buried in massive debt. She lived day to day in hardship, relying on a roadside stall to survive. As for Damien, he never changed. He eventually lost everything at the gambling tables and vanished without a trace. Meanwhile, the company Gabriel and I built flourished. We were on the verge of going public. We stood together, posing for a photo in front of our company building. On my left stood my best friend Gabriel, on my right, my beloved Selena. My heart was at peace, and the future? It looked just as bright.